Since the beginning of the universe, there have been organisms that hold power over other organisms. Usually occurring in physical traits, some organisms were able to survive over others. This concept of natural selection can be compared to the competition between different kinds of people. Instead of only physical traits, humans can hold power through knowledge and technology. Throughout history, people of European descent tended to have a self-given power over others because of their technological achievements. The English, along with the Spanish, Portuguese, and French, were able to colonize land in North America because of this power they held over the native people. Even though the natives had lived on the land for many years prior, the Europeans had no problem controlling the natives because they had guns, and horses, and also guns. The natives had bows and arrows, but they did not have guns. The Europeans tried to justify their actions, claiming they were introducing the correct religion and way of life to these savages. This concept of justification of dominance continued through American history. Americans have tried to justify servitude, slavery, imperialism, and more. But today, we will talk about our favorite.
Hey, that's mine.
Oh, but, see, God said I could have it, so thanks. American westward expansion largely characterized the 19th century. Expansions during the 1840s and beyond were made with manifest destiny in mind. Manifest destiny was a term coined by John L. O'Sullivan, editor of the Democratic Review, in 1845. "Our manifest destiny," he said, "is to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions." In other words, Americans had a God-given right to occupy the land between the oceans. In this case, Americans held power over the Native Americans and Mexicans as they used it to their advantage and justified it with manifest destiny. Starting in 1819, farmers of the Ohio River Valley had interest in the fertile lands of Oregon. This interest grew to huge amounts by 1842, when the already occupied Puget Sound appeared to offer great trading opportunities. Oregon fever was in full swing, with families making their way down the Oregon Trail in their wagons in search of a more successful life. The far west was quickly populated, and Oregon City boomed. The city was located near Clackamas River. Native tribes like the Clawalalas, Kashooks, and Molalas lived along the same river on the opposite side. Natives who weren't killed off by various diseases like smallpox and cholera were moved off of their land to the Grand Ronde Reservation as more eager families came in. 250,000 Americans braved the trip down the Oregon Trail. Some made it, some died, and the others ended up in California. 3,000 of these Americans spilled into the Mexican province of California, most ending up along the Sacramento River. Here, Americans were surprisingly accepting of the Mexican culture as it greatly benefited the American economy. New England merchants integrated into Mexican society, sometimes marrying into rich Mexican families and becoming Californios. In this case, power did not have to be asserted because they could directly benefit off of the Mexican ranchers' successes. Americans rebelled against the Mexicans and proclaimed Texas independent from Mexico and pro-slavery. Americans annexed Texas, making it the 28th state in December of 1845. After this, there were arguments over where the border between the lands were, and the Mexican-American War broke out in 1846. By the time it ended in 1847 and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed in 1848, Mexico had lost about 1/3 of its territory, including nearly all of present-day California, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. America used its physical dominance to continue its manifest destiny at the expense of the politically divided and military unprepared Mexico. Westward expansion was also achieved during the California Gold Rush. It brought many Americans, natives, Californios, Australians, Mexicans, Chileans, Chinese, and various foreigners who all hoped to make a living off the precious gold flakes they would find. The 49ers, as they called themselves, were highly discriminatory. American miners had no problem with other white miners, regardless of their ethnicity, but they ruthlessly expelled obvious minorities. When Chinese miners arrived in 1850, whites called for laws to ban them from California. Before the gold rush, much of the arable farmland was still held by natives and Mexican grantees, but American migrants pushed aside both groups. At the beginning of the rush in 1848, there were roughly 150,000 natives in California. By 1861, there were only 30,000. White settlers got rid of native people with disease and systematic campaigns of extermination, and political leaders could not care less. In 1851, Governor Peter Burnett said, "A war of extermination will continue to be waged until the Indian race becomes extinct." Later in 1853, Congress authorized 5 reservations of 25,000 acres each and refused to provide military protection to the Native Americans. Despite efforts to simply move natives, many settlers just murdered Indians to push them off non-reservation land. The Yuki people of the Round Valley in Northern California were unjustly killed in large numbers and sold as slaves because they were an inconvenience to the Americans and their destiny to conquer all land. Americans used their physical and social power to move minorities out of the way, whether it be a physical shift or a physical extermination. The goal to expand America was justified by manifest destiny, which then justified all of the actions that were necessary to expand completely. The justified dominance using physical and social power became part of the culture and continued to affect history beyond the expansion and manifest destiny period. Southern apologists justified slavery as a better lifestyle than Northern wage worker lifestyle during the same time, and later expansion to other countries was justified as America's responsibility to introduce countries to democracy during the period of American imperialism. Today we see lasting results of social dominance from these justifications of our actions in history. Unfortunately, justifications also created a cultural idea that some other cultures are inferior, which has led to racism still present today. Without justifications of dominance and ideology like manifest destiny, we might not have the racism and inequality, but we also might not have the economic and political success we have had and will have. Without them, America may not have had the same economic successes, legislative changes, and culture that has impacted the world.